Get ready for an unfair advantage over your competition. This is the Sales Edge podcast, where globally recognized sales expert and trainer Joe Peachy helps you sharpen your skills for booking more appointments and closing more deals. And now, here's your host, Joe Peachy.
Welcome back to Sales Edge. This is Joe Peachy of Peachy & Peachy, and we continue to strive to help you gain an unfair advantage over your competition, to get in front of your target market, to generate quality leads in that target market, to be able to close more business. At the end of the day, that competitive edge sometimes is right in your own seat. And so the last two podcasts were about bogus beliefs. We're going to take a little detour today. We're going to talk about some indicators in business. And I think this is part and parcel to our last session, which was, are great salespeople born, or do they learn how to sell? I think everything has to be measured. I think you have to have a set of standards by which you measure things. We will cover some of those measurements. But today we're going to talk about indicators. Indicators are things that absolutely are how you measure growth, lack of growth. Those are benchmarks along the way that you can use to correct, that you can refocus. We're constantly measuring things, and we keep our indicators very, very in front of us. I have a whiteboard with our key indicators. I'm going to talk to you today about some indicators that you may want to use, you may want to measure, okay? I think anything you measure, anything that you use as an indicator will help you improve in those areas. And so many times people set New Year's resolutions, and they wait till the end of the year. They wait till the end of the quarter. They wait to mid-year to begin to look at indicators when, quite frankly, I measure my indicators every day. If I'm getting off mark, if I'm getting out of focus for where I want to go, I want to make sure that the indicators are clear and I can correct immediately. We've been doing this a long time. Our indicators don't change. If anything, we're more aware of them. So let me ask you a couple questions. Number one, do you measure your key indicators? I don't know if you've ever read the book Traction. It's a really good book. And in that book, it talks about accountability standards. These are indicators. Do you have, if you were to sit down right now, okay, take out a pad and really go through this with me today, this is really going to be a great coaching point today because it's going to give you a list of things you should measure that will indicate growth or failure. Like I said in podcast number 1, 97 out of 100 businesses will not be in business after 8 years. And I really do believe if some of those businesses would have paid attention to their indicators, they'd still be in business. So question number 1 was, do I measure the indicators? Number 2, do you have indicators? I mean, clearly, have you listed a set of indicators? All right? One of my key indicators is how many appointments am I really getting, qualified appointments? That's probably the key indicator of business growth. Number 3, what are your indicators? Right now, and later in this podcast, I'm going to give you some, but right now what I'd like you to do is write down or think through what you believe your key indicators are of growth. All right? Number 4, do you know what causes growth? Boy, this is really important. I work with a lot of companies, small, big, and large. I work with a lot of individuals. And I will tell you a big portion of those people really struggle to know what causes growth. All right? My 5th question is, do you know what stops growth? What causes a business to stop growing? What causes your individual business to stop growing? What causes you to stop growing? What causes you to grow? There's I know what makes our business grow. I know what makes our business stop. And so if I know that, I've got to be aware of it every day. So here's some key indicators. You may want to write these down. Really put them down in your mind, put them down on paper, maybe put them on a whiteboard. I love whiteboards. In my office is not really for aesthetic value. In fact, my kids made a sign for me called the War Room. There's not a lot of pictures of me with famous people in there. And I've met and spent time with some famous people, but what's really more important to me is whiteboards, charts, things that I can look and see right now what's going on in my business. So number one, your number one key indicator, how many ways do I generate prospect leads? So think through it right now. Make a list. How many ways are you generating leads right now? Number two, where are your leads coming from? So at the end of the year, at the end of 90 days, at the end of a week, can you write down a quality lead and backtrack it? Where did this come from? Because if you do that, you'll know where to invest your time and money in the next couple weeks, in the next month, in the next year. People write checks to associations. They write checks to networking events, which are great. They write checks to lead generation. But do they measure, are they getting return on investment? And while we're in the return on investment, please factor in your time. I don't know what your hourly rate is, and I don't know if you've ever given yourself an hourly rate. But if you were to look at your hourly rate and see, is this time being compensated for at that rate? I remember many, many years ago when Dawn and I were massively in debt, and I started a part-time business, and we were losing everything. I was paying a kid in town to cut my grass, and my neighbors thought I was crazy, and because they knew we were broke. But all I could think about was, why would I do something that is worth about $10 an hour when I could be working in a business that would generate a higher dollar value hour? So think about that. Where are your leads coming from? Now, here's the big one. Number 3, which lead generation delivers your best clients? Okay? Well, that's a big one. Which lead generation is delivering your best products? For us, right now, it's LinkedIn. Okay? If I have to look at, and we have, like I said, 12, 13, 14 different ways to generate leads, and that's all fine and dandy. But at the end of the day, when I look at our highest revenue producing clients, it's really coming from LinkedIn at this point. Number 5, it's going to be hard. You may not be able to do this immediately, but get the mindset of tracking. Okay? How much does it cost for you to acquire a client? What is the cost of client acquisition? Is it costing you $10? I know there's some people that buy leads, and they can really track that. All right? But at the end of the day, when you join a networking event, whether you belong to a chamber, whether you're paying for a pay-per-click, whatever it is, have you figured out, what does it cost me to get a good client? I'll tell you something. When Dawn and I were broke, busted, and disgusted, and we didn't have anything, we measured nothing. Well, there was nothing to measure, okay? But the better we've gotten in business, the more I've learned the indicators and the measures are how you move forward. Let's go down to number 5. How many phone calls do I make daily? So now I have these leads. How many of these leads do I pick up the phone and call to set an appointment? Now, I would say to you, don't lie to ourselves. I would recommend a book called Leadership and Self-Deception. It's pretty self-explanatory. I think in life we don't mean to lie to people, but we lie to ourselves. And so if you really track how many times you're dialing, how many outbound calls you're making to these leads that's costing you money to get. I mean, it's costing you so much money to get a lead. And then it sits on your desk. It sits in your database. How many outbound calls are you really making? Below that, let's call this 5A. How many people are picking up? So you make 40 calls. How many of those 40 calls people actually pick up the phone? That's an important indicator. Now, under that, number 6, what is your phone call to pick up to appointment ratio? So you make a call, somebody picks up the phone. Do you get an appointment? Don't you get an appointment? Are you measuring that? And I'll tell you the number one reason, I believe, and you'll learn that Joe has a lot of Joeisms, and this is a Joeism. I believe we don't measure because it's painful. I believe it's uncomfortable to measure. I believe because we look at business as I win or I lose. I'm successful or failure. This has nothing to do with success or failure. Okay? This is a measuring stick. Because based on that, you'll know, do I have a quality script? Am I calling the right person? I think we have to stop taking things personally. I mean, it's not about you as a person. Is my script quality? Am I calling the right person? Am I generating leads the right way? When I pick up the phone, okay, there's so much information out there, and you can get clouded because to measure something, you feel now it's about accountability. And I'm going to do a session on accountability because that's another word people really don't like. And nobody is your boss. I mean, some of you do have bosses and they're tracking things. But at the end of the day, if you are involved in growing something, so you're involved in sales, whether you work for someone else or not, you really kind of have your own business because you're being paid on performance. Let's get down to number 7. How many direct meetings do you have a month? Let me talk to you about what's direct. There's a couple different kind of meetings out there. There's indirect, which is, let's say you meet somebody at a chamber, you decide to grab a cup of coffee together to get to know each other, possibly generate quality leads for each other. This becomes a referral source. This is a great meeting. I'm not telling you not to do this type of meeting. I'm telling you to do this type of meeting. However, a direct meeting creates direct results. That's where you pick up the phone for a lead. You have a quality script. You give them your script, and if they decide to take a meeting, they're coming to the table because the value proposition you gave them, it's their idea to have a meeting, and your intent for this first meeting is to do your core story interview to start the selling process. Does that make sense? And so I measure that. In fact, the single most important indicator for my business, Joe Peachy of Peachy and Peachy, is how many quality core story meetings, direct meetings, am I doing a month? Now, I could break it down for you that I know to the dollar, based on how many I get, what the minimum I will make. The more direct meetings you do, the higher your income. It's just the law of numbers. And so in our business, the number one indicator that I'm going to focus on is how many direct meetings am I really doing? Okay? Not how many indirect meetings. And I know a lot of people that are listening, excuse me, may be focusing in a way where you do a lot of indirect meetings with the idea and hope you will get referred. Indirect meeting, here's another Joeism. Are you ready? Indirect meetings get you indirect results. I'm not telling you not to do these. I'm telling you, when you do a meeting like that, that is a lead generation meeting, not a sales meeting. So an indirect meeting where you're meeting someone to create a relationship, to possibly see if you want to be referral partners, to drive the relationship deeper, That's a great meeting. That's a referral meeting. And that is under my heading, lead generation. A direct meeting is when I sit down with someone and the intent is to start my core story interview and the intent is to start the selling process. My recommendation is for you to set a goal to have 20 direct meetings a month. Now, I can already read some of your minds. You didn't think I could read your mind through this microphone. You're saying, I do more than that. I would venture to say you need to evaluate the quality of your meetings. I would venture to say that maybe your direct meetings are not as direct as you think they are, because 20 quality meetings in your target market a month should generate an incredible income. Unless you're selling a widget, unless what you're selling doesn't have a lot of margin, unless you're more in the retail world. I'm talking to you about if you're doing an outbound sale and your product is priced with great value, you're probably going to make a great living. Let's move on to number 8. Here's an indicator. How about your closing ratio? How many of those direct meetings move to proposal, move to contract, move to execution? Do you measure that? Are you really measuring when I do that direct meeting? Now, I don't want you to measure it the day you do that meeting. It could be not now. I'm talking about from the day you do that meeting. Let's look out 12 months. How many of those meetings generate business? Number 9, what is your profit margin per client? When they say yes, when this goes to market, okay, how much money do you make? How much do you keep? I don't care what the gross is. What do you net? I know here at Peachy & Peachy, we work very hard on our margins to make sure we are keeping a whole lot more than the money comes in. So as we wrap this one up, your homework is to start looking at your indicators. They may be different than ours. Start listing those indicators. Start moving in that direction. Be accountable to your indicators. Whatever you measure will improve. This is Joe Peachy of Peachy & Peachy, but this is the Sales Edge podcast. Now make sure, should you have any questions at all, send them to Joe at PICIANDPICI.com. But in the tagline, I'd like you to put Sales Edge. So I know those questions coming in. I will be able to take those, put them in the Sales Edge file, and then answer these questions on a weekly basis, because your questions are important to us. I know, there's going to be things that I may not cover. It may not be part of our program that week, but you want to know right now. So the faster you can get those questions to me, the faster I can answer them, and I will address them, okay? This show is sponsored by Peachy & Peachy, and should you want to check out Peachy & Peachy website, that's www.PICIANDPICI.com. Also, please check out my LinkedIn profile, Joe, and then PICI, and send me an invite. Let's get connected, because you know what? The more connections you have, the more business you have. So thanks a lot for tuning in. We'll see you on the next podcast. This has been a great day.
Thanks for listening. New episodes will air each Tuesday and Thursday, so make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and give us a 5-star review. The Sales Edge is sponsored by Peachy & Peachy Incorporated, a firm which provides training, consulting, and keynote presentations, empowering corporations and individuals to attract and retain quality clients for higher revenues and growth. Make more money in sales. Speak with Joe in person by calling 407-947-2590 or visit www.peachyandpeachy.com. Spelled PICIANDPICI.com.